Hello, hello, this is Agnes, and today I'm going to share a manifesting story of my own with you. And I applied the Neville technique that Abdul, his teacher, taught him, and it was you are in Barbados. Okay, so he was explaining to Neville, Neville's teacher was explaining to Neville, you have to see yourself there and think from there to get there. Okay, so some years ago, at the time, I was in about $36,000 worth of debt. I had a job that I wasn't earning that much money in, and I was really learning to really apply. I had read Neville for quite a long time, but it was the applying part that I was still learning to do, in particular to things that I wanted, which in this case was travel. So what I did was I started doing like Neville was told about Barbados. I started doing you are in France, and that's where my family is. So what I did was I looked out of my own eyes. I could see myself, my feet walking down the main street of the village that I come from in France. And I did that night after night, and I could see, the different things in the village. I walked all the way down the main street to the church where my mum and dad were married and where 4 generations of my family has lived for obviously a very long time. So I did that night after night after night, and I ended up getting a tax return. It fully paid for my trip, and within 2 weeks, I was walking down that main street. So that was the first time. I hadn't at this stage traveled in 20 years because I was in debt and I didn't have any money. So I did it once, and then I started to think I now have one overseas trip a year fully paid. So got back from France, and I started to do the same thing for Canada. My brother was living in Canada at the time, and I thought I really want to see my brother. So I imagined, I didn't really know where my brother was living or what it looked like, but I had lived in Canada 16 years, so I remembered, the pine trees, the fir trees, the maple leaves, the smell of cut grass when I was a child. Oh, sorry. I just had a omelette with cheese, and I know cheese isn't good for me, but I still have it. So, getting back to it, I then manifested that trip the following summer. Again, did the same thing. Like Neville said, I am in Barbados. I am in Canada. And I walked around in imagination using the bits that I had and seeing and feeling my brother, hugging him. He always says silly things. He's really funny. He makes me laugh uncontrollably. So I sort of use that stuff. And then I went to Canada with my mum. So that was the second thing. Then I did it again. I did France again the following year. I did Canada again. And I had 5 consecutive trips fully paid in 6 years. Then I thought, I really would love to have 4 trips in 1 year. And I've done, I've extended myself mentally. I've used my Neville imaginal muscle, and I've created reality around this quite a few times. So what I did was I thought, okay, if I declare I'm going to have 4 trips in a year, that's going to require quite a bit of work. By this stage, though, I'd used my imagination to clear and wipe out all the debt. So then I wanted to come to London, and I wanted to spend time with someone in particular, And I wanted to still be in Sydney with my mum and my friends and enjoy that as well in the sun. So I started to imagine that I would go back and forth and have 4 trips in 1 year. And I declared it. I said, Infinite Spirit, open the way for my 4 trips this year. And then I laughed because I thought, goodness, that's a bit far-fetched. It's a big, big thing. Now, this is the weird part of the story. I was trying to decide, it was, let me think, the first week of January 2016. And I was at a set of traffic lights, and I'm going to do another YouTube about signs, but this is the little bit about, signs that will lead into the rest of the trips. So I was at a set of lights and I said, Infinite Spirit, God within, give me a clear, unmistakable, totally obvious sign. Do I go to London for the 19th of January? Because that's when there was a conference on, and I would go from the conference to then see the person I wanted to see. So I had made this bold declaration while I was at the lights. 10 minutes later, I'm driving on and there's this billboard. And in Sydney, the billboards rotate around. So I'm stopped at this light and the billboard says, a taste of London. Anyway, I was like, wow. And this thing just hit me in the chest. I mean, that was such a clear sign. And then the billboard rolls around and it says, good to go. And it was a Kentucky Fried Chicken ad. And they were advertising London and Sydney. I don't know why. But anyway, I thought, wow, okay, that was a clear, unmistakable sign. I'm going. So less than 2 weeks later, I'm on the plane. I'm at the conference. I go to London. I see my person. And I end up with my very first trip out of 4. Back to Sydney again. By this stage, I had quite a few visuals of London, so I did, again, tours in my mind. I looked up Google Images, looked up Google Tours, and I looked up London. And I would live in imagination in London, just like Neville lived in imagination in Barbados. So, trip number 2, come back for 2 months, go back to Sydney. And I'm thinking, wow, I've actually manifested 2 out of the 4 trips that I want. So, and fully paid. I made sure in my mind, I thought, if I'm a conscious creator and selector, I'm going to select the trip that's fully paid. So, I ended up, again, turning to my imagination and expecting trip number 3. So again, everything fell into place. I ended up renting out my place as to where I was staying, and so all my expenses were paid while I was away, and all my bills, everything was covered. These 2 people came and rented the place back to back, my place back to back, and everything was paid for. So then I get back to Sydney again, 2 months in London, came back, and this is, 3 trips down, and I'm thinking, wow, even if I do 3 out of 4, that's good. And then the part of me said, you said 4, you still have 1 to go. So again, I thought, well, I'm going to apply my imagination. I'm living in London. By that point, I had stayed in an Airbnb regularly. I knew what the decor looked like. I knew what was around me in the neighborhood. I knew the shops. I knew the bus, the red bus, and all that stuff. So I called on my imagination to live looking out of my eyes as a participant, not an observer, and I engaged in the scenes night after night. So, trip number 4 happens. Fully paid again. I'm on the plane, and I stay till about 3 days before Christmas. So, and then I thought, wow, I have manifested my bold declaration that I made at the end of 2015 4 trips fully paid in 1 year. So that's the manifesting trip story, which is mine. And I would also affirm I now travel 4 trips in 2016 fully paid. And I would say that as well during the day to keep in the feeling of the state of the wish fulfilled, living from the end result as much as I could. So there you go. There's the manifesting story. Now, a lovely, lovely viewer of my YouTube channel, Dan Haynes, has kindly done a audio reading of the story of Neville going to Barbados. So I'm going to put it down in the description, and I'm also going to put a couple of YouTubes of my journey. Each leg I did a YouTube, and it is a little bit more detail if you want to know exactly the mechanics more of how I did them, the trips. I will put those YouTubes down below for you to watch also, so you can just really go into the mechanics of how this really works if you're wanting to manifest a trip for yourself fully paid and really soon. It will assist you to do so. And yeah, I think passing on a story is always one of the ways I prefer to learn, and hearing the ins and outs of how somebody did it is always really helpful. So happy manifesting your trips. Let me know in the threads where you want to go, how often you want to go, and also who you want to go with, who you want to see. And yeah, let's do a co-selecting of wonderful trips around the world for 2017. Lots of love to you, and I really hope that helps you manifest some trips for yourself.